How are you all? My name is Nicole Yvonne, and this is Healing on the Mat. But today we are exploring some concepts before we jump into our practice on the mat. And we are going over this book called Rite. It's by an author named Christy Angel Bowman. And as I explained in the previous video, I said she was a counselor. She is a therapist. She has a PhD, and she has went to school for ministry and theology. And so she is a trained minister, although I don't think that she practices in that regard. She still knows a lot, and she ties a lot of things back to women because the Bible tends to stand on a patriarchal system instead of a matriarchal system. She wants women to be informed about how our spirituality can grow and have depth. And so yesterday we learned about the rite of birth. Today, we are going to learn about the rite of initiation, and I would like to put this disclaimer out there that yes, I am a woman, and yes, I primarily want women to grow, but as a yoga instructor, when we dive into the practice, the lessons that we learn here can be applied to men too. The book was written because men are primarily given a birthright and women are not. But in this society, men of culture, men of color, or diversity and ethnic backgrounds typically don't know their birthright either. Some do, some don't. But I would say that some of these same lessons apply to men. So today we are up to rite of initiation. And this is about coming of age. This is about understanding who you are as you develop. This is about growth and knowledge and just security within the self. And so I told you all before, we went through the chakra system. This book kind of relates deeply back to the chakra system. So as we go into the rite of initiation, this is going to primarily focus on the sacral chakra and things that may have happened between the ages of 7 to 14. Sometimes I told you they go in ranges of 10. So this would be from ages possibly 10 to 20, but I would stick around the 7 to maybe 14, 16 age range. So the first thing that I want to point out, I just want to read this because I feel like it explains why I feel so connected to the author. But it says, I begin to explore what it meant to be a huntress. The huntress is the woman who is always looking for opportunities to explore the unknown, to use and show her emotional abilities to find purpose and exemplify the meaning of life. I came from a culture where I wanted to find my own connection with hunting. It happened when I began to study that globally women have hunted in the water. And I'm tied to this because I'm not really a hunter, but I am very tied to the water, and I am very curious about how it all works, how it all ties together. Ever since I got divorced, my path has been growth and enlightenment and maturity and wisdom and how we all connect together. And so this is going to dive into some of that, but it's going to help you have thought to process what you need to be honing in on when we go into our practice toward the mat. And I want to add this little disclaimer that I always want to get into flow yoga because I know how to flow for myself when I'm practicing by myself. But when it comes to teaching, I understand that people that are limited in their yoga practice or in their stretching abilities or even their fitness abilities, I understand how daunting that is because at one point I was 265 pounds and I didn't get it myself. And so as much as I want to teach flow yoga, my primary focus is for you to learn how to breathe, for you to learn how to tap into your own body, for you to have awareness of your thoughts and how they play out into your body. And that typically takes time, which means I lean more toward a hatha or a yin yoga type practice. But it's still very strengthening, it's still very building, and it's still very deep. But I prepare you for flow. I don't necessarily teach flow the greatest. But as we dive in, yes, I feel curiosity. And so when we talk about initiation, one of the first things that we dive into is women and their menstrual cycle. And what was that like? What was it like for you to find out that you were bleeding? Was it scary? Was it fearful? Did you have a support group to back you up? Or like I've talked to some women and they said they were scared to go to their parents. I talked to one person and she didn't even go to her mom until the second time that it happened because she was scared of the reaction. And so what was that experience like for you? One of the things that I like about her is she has another book called Theology of the Womb. And in that book, she talks about the red tent, where back in the day we were exiled from civilization. We had to go out into the wilderness when we had our cycles. And in that tent, we think we were just out in the wilderness by ourselves. No, there were a tent full of other women who were also on their menstrual, who were also birthing babies, who were nursing babies and helping nurse babies for those who couldn't do it for themselves, lactation. There were older women teaching. And in these communities, I mean, we're still women. Just because it was back in the day and it might have been taboo, they still had open conversation and dialect about the things that they were going through, the things that they were struggling with. And so when we dive into shadow work, these are things that you should focus in on and kind of shadow yourself through. In the Rite of Birth, we learn that we want to learn our birth story, what our parents were going through, what they were experiencing. Now we want to focus in on what was it like when we first experienced some of those things. So next, there is sexuality. And I'm sorry, when we start with women and their menstrual, puberty, when we tie it back to men, what was it like when you first experienced how your body parts worked? Did you talk to somebody? Did your dad help you? Did he guide you in the direction of sex? And sometimes we get into that aspect where with girls it's taboo to have sex and it's wrong, but men, they're encouraged to just go out and do their thing. Well, where a man spills his seed is critical. It is important. And so how were you taught as a man to decipher your body parts and puberty once you hit it? Then when we get to sexuality, what happened? Was it a loving story? Because there are some people who really were truly in love and they really did love the partner that they gave themselves to at first, and they really did have a really beautiful connection. Whereas for others, it was daunting, or maybe it was inappropriate. And even for men have been molested, and it's not always by other men. Sometimes it is by women as well. And so men have this problem, but women too. Was your first experience inappropriate touching? Was it actual sexuality? Was it the act of sex? Did you like it? Did you enjoy it? I've talked to some women who said, I just felt like I needed to get it out the way. And so when we understand as we get older that our body is a temple and that it should be treated and respected a certain way, what was your first experience like? Digest that, write that, journal that, figure that out. And that's why I say when we get to this part, birthing starts with the root chakra. Now we're into that sacral chakra, right? Sexuality and finding ourselves and understanding our identity, which starts to rise up into the solar plexus. Another thing that she talks about here is that there was a few things that I wanted to read out. I'm trying to rush because I know you all don't like to be kept long, but there were a lot of things in this chapter that I felt like needed to be pointed out, because when we talk about sex and our cycles and things of that nature, there are mother wounds. And she says here, mothers teach daughters how to find their contentment. Daughters learn when they look at their mothers to make a note of what holds their mother's gaze. And so that is critical. That is important. Did your mom even know what she was looking at? Did she have a healthy background in order to teach you how to handle these situations? Because a lot of times they cannot give us tools that they were not given themselves. And so did you come from a background of women who learn how to have these conversations, who learn how to approach it in a healthy manner, who learn how to help aid you in the process? One of the reasons that I'm so open with my son, and I know some people think it's taboo, but I want him to know that he can come to me. It might be uncomfortable now, but as he gets older, he will know that I'm here, that I'm an open book, that I will give him the truth, that I will not hold back from him, so that we can discuss these uncomfortable conversations in safe grounds. When I had the conversation, it was pretty much, you don't do this until you're married, and that was it. But I'm learning that my mother didn't have a great sense of knowledge when it came to sexuality herself. Her background was very limited and very annoying. So there were things that she just simply could not help me with. If I be transparent, when it came to wearing tampons, it was, you're having sex if you do that. Well, no, not necessarily. Now do I understand that tampons aren't always the best, but there's reasons for them. There's necessity for them in some cases. And we have new things now that can make it better, but kind of digest these things as you're going throughout the process. It also says sometimes our mothers can, this leads to the point, sometimes our mothers cannot lead us, and they refuse to do the work to understand the typical dilemmas of womanhood, such as sexuality, beauty, eating disorders, femininity, alcohol, employment, financial power, and independence in relationships. Mothers teach daughters how to interact in this world. Girls might be allowed to explore who they can be as women, much like the lioness with her cubs. A mother prepares her daughter for initiation into womanhood, or doesn't. And if she doesn't, someone must. And so we want to digest and make sure that we are better as we move forward. Something else that she talks about is divorce. And when we get into divorce for ourselves, that will be the rite of exile, which is coming later. But when we are children that experience divorce. And so for me, my parents, my stepdad and my mom did not get divorced until much later in life, but I still had a sense of divorce because my parents were not together in any capacity when I was born. My dad was not around very often, my biological father. And so I just saw my mother, which was me digesting separation and not having a man in the household. But for her, divorce meant that she had to learn how to see her dad in a very different light, because what was once connection and community and in-tune family and her being, almost a daddy's girl turned into half of her siblings lived with her mom, half of her siblings lived with her dad. She saw her dad sparingly. When she did, he was constantly with new women. And it took time for her to be able to digest that and what it looked like. And this all happened at a time where she needed to understand herself, and it was critical. And so when we get healthy, so when we talk about the water, because it began talking about the water, but it also talked about hunting. And so she grew up in Louisiana where she did hunt in the woods, and it wasn't necessarily her thing, but she learned that women could hunt in the water too. Learn what you like. Do you like the forest? Do you like the water? Do you like heat, in the desert? What do you like? Because they all offer aspects that help us mold and grow together. So for example, in the forest, we see community, we see connectedness, we see how plant life works together and how it fuels one another. And underneath the soil, the roots are digging ways for the other plants to grow and nurture each other. And I think it's nitrogen is provided in the soil. And so mature plants help other smaller plants to grow and thrive. Mature plants offer protection and shade for some of those smaller plants. Whereas the ocean, while it does have its own sense of community and its own ecosystem, is primarily for cleansing. It is primarily for washing anew and making you whole, making you feel purified and cleansed so that you can go out and be a healthier, wholer person in that community. Understand what you're attached to, because they're all forms of energy. And how does your energy show up? How do you send light to the world? That is what our practice is for, because I want you to be able to become grounded enough and mature enough to know who you are and where you're going. But the last point that I want to make when it comes to initiation is being naive. This was a hard part, and for some of us, we might learn it young. There are some aspects of being naive that I did not learn until my mid-20s to early, even late 30s. Some people, I don't know, they take advantage of you. And it doesn't mean that they're trying to be cruel, but it's just how people operate. And sometimes when you are naive and you don't see it until you see it, it can be a very hurtful and traumatizing thing. I know for me it was. And you need to be able to manage how you come out, because when I figured it out, baby, I came out the gate swinging. I came out the gate trying to dish everything that had been dished to me. And that wasn't healthy. That didn't feel like me. It wasn't me. But it was a reaction. It was a response. And sometimes when you're backed into a corner and you're just seeing what's happening for the first time, it's almost like you've been backed into a corner and you come out swinging. And my goal is to help anybody younger that has not experienced these things yet to have awareness and to have knowledge, so that they don't have to come out swinging, so that they don't have to utilize that tool unless they absolutely have to. And even if they do, they utilize it in the right way, because I came out with an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And yes, that Scorpio nature in me became very vengeful that I didn't know existed until I knew. But now I'm more aware. It's not intentional, and I can hone in on it better, and I can protect it more. And so these things, the initiation rite of womanhood marks when the doors of enlightenment open upon you, such as when, we'll stop there. When enlightenment open upon you, the doors of enlightenment open upon you. And then psychological initiation happens to women throughout their lives. Some examples include betrayal from a trusted partner or burying a beloved relationship. Another one, less named in Christian circles, is women's first sexual encounter with someone without fully being present in her body. And that happens a lot, we find out, even if you waited until marriage. That sometimes, because of how men have been taught and because of the purity that women were taught to hold on to, that even if you waited until marriage, you could be entering into an initiation process within your marriage that you didn't sign up for, or that doesn't feel so pleasant. And it says, for a woman who cannot safely enjoy sexual development, she creates for herself a different infrastructure of arousal, celibacy, abstinence, friendship, rather than romance or sexuality. And then often our stories are of crossing from places of unknown to knowing are marked with shame. And so we want to get rid of that shame. And that takes me into the actual practice. When we get into the practice today, we are opening up our full body. Yesterday, we opened up our body, but we did it in a very grounding way. Today, you are going to notice that we are going to strengthen the core, but we are also going to dive into some other poses that help you to balance the core and open up the rest of your body so that you're not still hiding in shame. These practices are to expose your vulnerability so that you can get rid of the vulnerability and be more confident, more in tune, more aware, and more bold. When I had a book club over this book, one of the things that I asked the women is, what do you want your legacy to be? Because we're going to get into Write a Legacy. And mine was to help women to help humans become the most bold, beautiful, dynamic people that they can be. And bold does not mean loud and boisterous all the time, but it does mean boldly being you, knowing who you are, understanding who you are, and comprehending it. So I hope that helped you all today. I know this one was a little longer than even I wanted it to be, but I felt like you needed to get all this good information. And so this is the mindset that you want when you hit that mat. But you all grab your blocks, grab your mats, and get ready for this routine. But remember that you all keep inhaling life. Remember that life, oxygen, is oxygen, it is sustainability, it is wisdom, it is depth, it is knowing who you are. And for my Christians, it is the Holy Spirit guiding you every step of the way when you pay attention to the breath. But you get rid of and you exhale. You inhale oxygen, you exhale carbon dioxide. So you exhale death. You exhale what doesn't serve you anymore. You exhale those negative thoughts. You exhale the shame and all of that. But until next time, y'all keep breathing, inhaling life, exhaling death. I'll see you on the flip side, and I love you. Grab your blocks because we're about to get on this mat.